Hello, everybody. This is the Chocolate News Podcast. I'm your co host, John Alexander Reese.
And I'm your co-host, Andria Carter.
And if you did not know, the Cincinnati Herald has been around since 1955 and is the leading African American owned newspaper in the greater Cincinnati area and northern Kentucky area. How's it going, Andrea?
It's going fine, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's unusually warm, actually.
Yes, it is. It's very weird that, it's like, is that going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? Is it, but it's the calm before the storm because, it's almost Thanksgiving time and, it always gets cold right before Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
So,
No, most,
it's kind of like the weather is like before it
yeah.
goes cold. So, it sort of reminds me of what was that cartoon Up in the Air
Oh,
where the
yeah.
dog goes squirrel and he goes ooh, sort of like
Yeah.
that. I know that's a little weird to compare, but it sort of reminds me of that.
Yeah.
So,
Nah,
but
I got
overall,
you.
it's been, I'm doing pretty well.
All right.
I'm living life, making sure my tires are up, have air in them, and found out that I had a little leak in my tire, so I had to go and get that fixed. That was
Oh,
unexpected.
yeah.
And but overall, it's a good week. It's a very good week. So,
All right. Well, good to hear. So, what are some of the chocolate news items this week?
well, it was election week
Yeah.
for the country.
Yep.
I
Election
think
day.
election day, Cincinnati, we had a number of issues that voters were asked their opinion about, and I think what's interesting is who won and who lost. So I'm going to start out nationally, and then I'll go local.
Okay.
And first I want to say congratulations to some firsts that occurred on election day. The Democratic candidate Gabe Amo, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. He is in Rhode Island, and he is the first Black candidate to be elected to Congress from Rhode Island.
Yeah, that's great.
And so that was a success story, about the change in thinking of who you want representing you. And he is a Ghanaian and Liberian immigrant
Hmm.
who did work in the White House. He was an aide, and he decided to step down this summer, and he became president and CEO of the Rhode Island Foundation. And the former Democratic Representative David Cillian, I believe, stepped down this summer, and so Amo was elected to replace him in Congress, and he defeated a Republican, Gary Leonard, to win this spot. So congratulations to him.
Yeah, that's
And then
impressive.
another first for Philadelphia is unbelievable. They elected the first woman ever to serve as mayor.
What?
And out of 100, Philadelphia's had 100 mayors. This is the first woman out of 100 mayors.
That's
First
unreal.
woman. And she's Black.
Wow, that's great.
So she's the first woman, the first Black woman, but she's not the first Black mayor because that's been some time ago. But she has a couple of firsts, which I think is incredible for Philadelphia. And she ran a good race. And I think that is it's interesting. She's 51. She's known locally and on the state level as well. And what's interesting, she beat out the heavily favored Republican David O to win the mayoral seat. So I think it's fantastic. Congratulations to her. I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll be seeing a lot and hearing a lot from her down the road. And then also, everyone knows the Central Park Five,
Yeah.
and they've gone through a lot, endured a lot, but Yusuf Salam of the Central Park Five, who exonerated, won a seat to the New York City Council, which is a really and just a 360-degree swing from where he was to this. He's
Oh,
now
yeah.
representing the city, and he's going to be representing. He is a Democrat, and he's going to represent the Central Harlem district on city council. The seat was unopposed, but it was one of where to think that you could go from prison, be exonerated, and run for office. And I think that's something special to be said of a success story of having a good ending and going into politics. And
Yeah.
so we'll see how he does playing the political game. And then nationally, Kevin Bashir was reelected as governor of Kentucky. He was very popular in what many say that Trump won that state in a very heavily Republican state. Andy Bashir, who's a Democrat, was reelected governor. He's very popular. And then in Virginia, the Dems won. They took control of both the House and the Senate and the state legislature in Virginia. Again, took majority control away from Republicans. So I think that's very, very interesting, all this says. And then locally in Cincinnati, we had our own election. And, let's say congratulations to those who were reelected or elected for the first time to city council. Reelected was Jan Michelle Kearney, who was also the owner of the Cincinnati Herald.
Yeah.
Mika Owens, Reggie Harris, Victoria Parks, Scotty Johnson, Jeff Cramerding, Mark Jeffries. They all were reelected. New to first time elected to city council was Seth Walsh, who was appointed earlier this year to what was Greg Landsman's seat when he was elected to Congress. And then Anna Albee, who was actually the leader of the Every Moms Demand Action, Every Town Young, which is the gun violence group.
Right.
She was elected to city council for the first time. Unfortunately, even though Liz Keating has represented the city well, she's a very moderate Republican. She is the last urban Republican to have served on city council, and she will not continue that in January. So she was voted off. I will say that how the Cincinnati, their votes sort of went the same way as the country did in terms of governance and leadership. The GOP took a hurting last night on election day, and again, I think the Republicans need this is an early wake up call. Get it together, because I think people are seeing more and more who can actually govern and lead and who can't. And I'm not trying to knock. There are some good GOP candidates out there and representatives, but they need to get their act together, because the unspoken message that we're seeing from our national leaders that's trickling down from the state and into local is we can't trust you anymore. You can't govern us. They're not listening to the people. They claim they are, but I mean, think about this. Ohio had two statewide issues. One about uplifting and upholding the right to an abortion, reproductive rights, and which passed. That initiative passed, so it's part of the Constitution from now on. It cannot be changed. And then the right to, believe it or not, own marijuana in your home. The state of Ohio has legalized marijuana just a little bit. Within 30 days, that will become law. And ideally, the law basically says that you can own up to 6 plants in your house, and you can have up to 15 grams in your home, and you can smoke it out in the public, but where there is no smoking signs, you can't smoke it. And you have to be careful, because even though the state of Ohio has legalized it, it is still a federal offense.
Yeah.
So it's a win, but not a win. But it's a win.
It's one step forward.
It's a step forward to the cannabis community, but there's still some legalities that you have to go through. There's going to be some licenses issued to those dispensaries who can now sell marijuana. And on top of that, now if you buy marijuana, you will be taxed, just like cigarettes.
Yeah.
So there's an upside and there's a downside.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so that, and also the local issues that we had on the ballot, issue 22, to sell the railroad. The city of Cincinnati, or residents said yes, sell the railroad. So they're doing that. A ballot initiative actually supported by Liz Keating, that anyone who wants to put something on the ballot in the city of Cincinnati now has to go to the law department first and get the ballot language before you submit it to be presented to the city council to be placed on the ballot. So you have to do what was the last step is now the first step before you go through the process to get something on the ballot. So it's just a reversal, but it also helps police language and make sure it's what you want to say, and that way you know already what's going to be said on the ballot, and people can't complain about later on, this isn't what I wanted. So there's that. The final issue that the citizens of Cincinnati voted on was the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And there was a lot of yes and no going on about that. And the Cincinnati residents shot it down. And they said no to this big time. It was up in the air. Everyone had good arguments about it. There were some people believe it will do well, help, bring about change, and, have affordable housing, more and more affordable housing, things like that. And a lot of people were against it. They thought the rents would be too high. Some people didn't believe it would not become political because of the advisory board. But also, some people believe that developers don't need another fund to fund their projects.
Right.
And because developers can get money where they can, they don't need another pot of money to play with. So, but it's going to be interesting that now that we voted to sell this railroad, and then we're going to get over $1 billion of this pot of money for capital improvement projects, it's going to be interesting to see what is improved first. And a lot of people wanted to vote against the railroad because they said the Black community was not represented in the discussion, and not represented like their needs in the community, because we're not going to get any of that money. Well, it's capital. That means now there's going to be money to fix roads, to improve our rec centers. Need a lot of rehabbing. There needs to be firehouses that are so old, need a lot of rehabbing, or built new. There's a lot of capital need and projects that need to get done. And I know there were other entities sort of asking about how can we get some of that money to build something, to quote, as a capital project, and they've been shot down. Initially, they've been shot down, but I think some people also were kind of like, don't let political means or pet projects get in on that money, because you said it's going to be for this. And a new stadium or a new concert hall or a new anything is not a capital project for the city. So there's that. So that's what happened locally on election day. So congratulations to everyone who won. We'll see what happens when we see this new entity go forward. I'm sure there's going to be a few kumbaya moments, and there's going to be interesting to see who does what. But the makeup, it's interesting. We now have 5 Blacks on city council.
I know, right? That's crazy.
It's crazy. We have 5 Blacks, 4 whites. We have 4 women on city council, the rest men. And it's like 2 Black men and 3 white men. So it's an interesting demographic to see where everyone's going to land and what they're going to do. Some people thought some were doing more work than others. Some were more out there than others. It's going to be interesting what pet project is going to be what, or what issue they're going to take ownership of, and see what they proceed forward in January. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah,
so there's that.
Very interesting.
Well, I mean, I think what's also interesting is that our vice mayor, she led I was watching the returns all night long, and Jan Michelle was the top vote getter.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, in the old, way back when before they changed the system, how they elected the mayor of Cincinnati, the old system was that whoever got voted on city council, if you were the top vote getter of city council, you automatically became mayor. And if we still had that in place, Jan Michelle would be mayor right now.
I did not know that actually.
Oh yeah, that was what, 3 scenarios ago, because
Yeah.
we've changed how people were elected, and then we started electing the mayor instead of doing it through city council, and now we have a strong mayor approach. And I mean, but I think it's a nice. I think people like the relationship between Aftab and Jan Michelle. That makes a nice combination of kind of like vice mayor mom and the young guy who is politically savvy, and there's wisdom there as we see this person improve upon what he wants. And I think Aftab, he is trying to get back to where people saw him in the community, saw him in the neighborhoods walking around. I know a number of residents prior to an incident that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. He has been walking in the neighborhoods, in the West End neighborhood, talking with people to get to know and hear what their issues are. So he's been going around and doing those quiet community walks that he used to do before he was elected to any office. And I think he's trying to get back to the people getting to know him as the guy, not just the mayor. And I think that's fantastic, and has been very well received by a number of residents, because he doesn't have an entourage, he doesn't have a photographer, it's just him. And they like that he's walking the neighborhood
Gotcha.
just like anybody else. And I think that's fantastic, because that's how politicians used to be, walking
Yeah.
the neighborhood and being there, and you got to know him and say, hey, how you doing, have a conversation. So
Yeah.
there's that. So that was election night. Now I know you're more aware of this than I am. The merger
Yeah.
of
The
Cedar Fair and Six Flags. Isn't that a monopoly of the amusement park entertainment industry?
Well, you know what? You think it would be, but I don't think it's quite a monopoly, at least not yet, I guess. Because you gotta remember, you got the two big ones. You got Walt Disney Parks and Resorts, you got Universal Parks and Resorts, and then I would say you had Cedar Fair. Of course, Cedar Fair, they own Cedar Point, of course, and then they bought Kings Island. They also got parks in California. They got Kings Dominion. They got Dorney Park, Michigan's Adventure. They even have a park in Canada, Canada's Wonderland, which is actually a wonderful park. I would recommend you visit there. Then you got Six Flags, who owns Six Flags owns so many parks. Uh, I think 27, probably more. Uh,
Wow, that's a lot of parks.
yeah, they have a lot of parks. Then you have SeaWorld, of course. And after that, I believe, at least in the United States, I think just in the United States, I think it's just a bunch of like you know, uh just one-off parks, just owned by, individual, independent companies and stuff. But you know what? Cedar Fair, with a few exceptions, the amusement park industry is, has been hit hard, especially since by COVID. It's hard to get people to return and everything. And, I guess Six Flags was feeling the same. And I know that actually Cedar Fair and Six Flags had already met at least once, and
Oh wow.
it didn't happen. And then Cedar Fair also met with SeaWorld, and that didn't happen either. But this it popped up again like a few weeks ago, and or maybe it was a week ago, but whatever, and I didn't think nothing was going to come of it, but it did. So they merged, and it was 8 billion. The company's worth 8 billion now. So like that's a lot. So the merger, I guess, to try to
That's a
compete,
lot. But I mean, but you know what? The prices are so high.
they are high. You know what?
I mean,
And
I mean, it's hard for average Joe to go and enjoy Kings
that
Island. I
that
mean,
that is true though. But compared to like parks like in Universal or Disney, it is cheaper.
oh
And
yeah.
I would argue that you get the same amount of thrill, especially if you're mainly into roller coasters and stuff. You get the same amount of thrill from there. But what's going to be unique about this merger is that the CEO is going to be is still going to be the current CEO of Cedar Fair. So it looks like they're keeping more of the Cedar Fair management, which is good because I think Cedar Fair management is very good. They run a very tight ship, and then of course you got the Six Flags brand, and they have like a lot of licensed characters. So they got like Looney Tunes characters in the park. They got DC characters in their park. So you get kind of more of the branding from Six Flags, and you combine it with Cedar Fair. So eventually, now I don't think there's going to be any there's not going to be there's not really going to be any difference for this upcoming season. At least I don't think so. But come 2025, that may change. Maybe Kings Island will sport the Six Flags Kings Island logo. I don't know. Maybe we'll be called Six Flags Cincinnati.
Oh,
I,
that's interesting.
I don't
Yeah.
know, or maybe we'll just be Kings Island because once Cedar Fair took over, they didn't call us Cedar Fair's Kings Island. They just named it Kings Island because Kings Island is a known name. It's a
Right.
known brand. So and by the way, I should say I do currently work at Kings Island. Just want to put that out there. But
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't expect anything to happen in the 2024 season, but 2025, who knows?
Well, they still do winter. Do they? I can't
Yes,
remember.
yes, Winterfest is still gonna be a thing, at least this
Okay.
year. I know that. And I expect Winterfest to continue being a thing because it's very popular. It's more popular than I anticipated. So
Really? Because I
oh
mean,
my
I
goodness,
remember when it
yes.
first got started, my sister worked out there, and she worked the chestnut booth,
The
and every
chestnut booth? Oh wow.
well, you know how roasting chestnuts, and so
Oh,
and
oh
everyone
wow.
came up to her and started singing, chestnuts roasting on an open fire, and by the time by the time she got home, she was like, if you say that to me, she used to yell at me when I would do it because it
uh,
drove her nuts. She was like, I'm so
uh,
tired of that. We couldn't even play Johnny Mathis or Nat King Cole because they have those songs that they sang. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. We were like, as soon as the song came on, she was like, turn it off. It was so funny. That's what I remember.
but
How old I am because I'm picking this out of the memory that my sister used to work at Winterfest when it first opened. But
yeah.
anyway, I don't know if they do that now, but
I don't think we do that, but I don't know. They
it
may
it was
bring it back.
it was a thing.
Yeah.
But it's
Um.
I haven't been to it in a long time, so I'll probably have to go and explore it this
Oh
year.
yeah, it's nice, especially that parade they have. That parade is real nice, and of
Mm.
course the hot chocolate.
Yes, the hot chocolate is always important.
The hot
That's
chocolate
very
is so
important.
good. But also one more thing I wanted to add is that I like it because this potentially means I get to go into all the Six Flags parks now, which is great.
Oh,
Because I always
okay.
Yeah, because I always wanted to go to Six Flags Magic Mountain and Six Flags over Texas and over Georgia. So I'm just like,
Oh,
oh,
wait a minute. Six Flags, is that the one with the mile high wooden roller coaster?
I I don't know which Six Flags, but yeah, it's in one of those parks.
Yeah, I've been there.
Oh yeah.
And let's just say I rode that wooden roller coaster during the day and at night, though I don't know if they have it anymore, but it freaked me out. And they caught a picture. You know how they take pictures of people on the roller coaster and you can buy it?
Yeah.
My picture was my eyes were closed and I was screaming at the same time, and they caught me. And I was like, I don't want proof of this, but I remember it. So beautiful park, wonderful, but and they said at night riding that wooden roller coaster, because of the change in temperature, it made the roller coaster go faster.
Mm.
And I was like, don't tell me that. And they told me that before I got on. I was like, don't tell me that. But anyway, I was with people who were just gluttons for punishment. What could I say? But
Uh,
anyway, I don't ride roller coasters now because I'm delicate. But anyway.
uh, but yeah.
But so it'll be interesting to see what happens next with Kings Island
Oh yeah.
and this. But the big news that we didn't get a chance to talk about, the Bengals won fourth game in a row.
Yay.
It was an awesome game. It was awesome. The Bills struggled at first, but they came back to tie early on. And then the Bengals just kind of like, oh, you want to tie us? I don't think so. And next thing I know, they were just going down the field and adding to the tote board. And Burrows passed 348 yards with 2 touchdowns. I mean, the Bills came back to sort of try and tie it up. They came back and showed that they could, try and win a football game. And it was a good game, even down to the wire. It was a good game. I mean, there was a lot of, everyone was getting fouled. Everyone was, I should say fouled, but there was a lot of this side, that side. We're all getting fouled by the referee. And there was a lot of pushing and shoving, because I think after they got over the touchy-feely moments with Bill Hammer, it's on. And, they got back to football. And they were knocking each other. There were injuries. Even Joe Burrow suffered a finger injury. But overall, it was an awesome game. I would love to see them play again, because it was really that good. Because you could see Joe Burrow's, his confidence on the team and on the field, and he was just throwing and just whatever. And but also the quarterback for the Bills, you could see not only his frustration, but when things connected well, you could see his passion and how it came across. And it was just a great, passionate game. And overall, it was just wonderful. So
Well, that's good. And I think the Bengals are on like a 4-game winning streak, so that's great.
I think it's lousy beginning, but I think we're going to have a very nice ending, or at least wild card chance. So we'll see what happens. Before we get to the last story that I want to present, we got to talk about 45.
Oh yeah, what has he done now?
Well, it was an interesting week. The lawsuit brought by the New York State against the Trump company, the Trump organization, I should say. You saw Trump took the witness stand on Monday, and Ivanka took the witness stand on Wednesday. And it was interesting to see the two different styles of answering questions. And Trump, he was frustrated. He wanted to present some documents and read some things, and the judge was like, no, you can't do that. This is not how it works. You can't just present some information. If it's not in the evidence, it's not part of discovery, you can't present that. He didn't like that. He didn't like the fact that he couldn't do what he wanted on the stand. Then he tried to make it political. The judge said it, Judge Enron said that, no, you can't do that. And then he ordered his attorney, please control your client. Then finally they just said, you know what, just let him go. And they let him rant, because out of his ranting about politics and, all this type of stuff, they got him to answer certain questions. And so one of the questions they had him answer was, we're talking about fraud, this is about fraud. So who was responsible for preventing fraud, and who was responsible for detecting fraud? And Donald Trump just said everybody. So he implicated himself and his sons and sort of Ivanka, that everybody was responsible for the fraud, even though they claimed he didn't do it. So that was that analysis. And, again, the rhetoric. And then Letitia James came out and said, like, we were prepared. We knew what he was going to do, but we know we had the evidence on our side. And we know what we wanted to ask. And at the end of the day, they proved their case. So that being said, Ivanka took the stand on Wednesday. First, to say that the Attorney General has rested their case after Ivanka testified. It's now for the defense. It's time for the defense to present their case. The trial so far has been on for 6 weeks. So a total of 25 witnesses. 24 were in person, has testified. Ivanka was the last witness called by the Attorney General's office, even though she tried to stop her testimony by claiming that it was a school week and she shouldn't be allowed to, testify because she needed to be there for her children. And the judge was like, yeah, right. And so she had to testify. I mean, that you can't even come up with a weak excuse. Come on, it's so weak. But what was interesting about Ivanka, she basically was answering some things. They're concentrated on a loan from the Deutsche Bank. And one she implicated her husband, saying that Jared introduced them to Deutsche Bank. That's one. And then two, she talked about that, Deutsche Bank, for this multi-million-dollar loan that they wanted from Deutsche, they had Donald Trump was going to be the guarantee, and he had to have a certain amount of money in place. They required at least $4 billion in place for this multi-million-dollar loan. And Ivanka had Donald lower what he said, he claims that he's $2 billion. And that's what they told Deutsche Bank, that he only had $2 billion. And they ended up getting the loan anyway. But she was part of lowering his finances, what his net worth was, to the bank. So she sort of implicated herself in this fraud.
Gotcha.
And at times things got testy. She claimed that she was an accountant, but at the end of the day, she took the stand, and right now we'll have to see what Donald Trump's attorneys are going to present in their defense of this case, because they tried to pull some things in court to sort of have a worthwhile appeals. They could file a decent appeals of the case once the judge rules on it. And basically the judge shot down their antics and said, don't even try it, because what they were trying to pull was already ruled on and they needed to move on. So I'm giving a small version of what went on of 45 and former 45 and children. But we'll see what happens next. And both Eric and Donald Jr. threw their father under the bus to save themselves.
Nice.
So, it's, I guess the family that plays together does not stay together. So,
okay.
But there's that. So there's that update. Then finally, an unfortunate situation. I know certain people have heard different things from around the country. Cincinnati suffered a mass shooting on Friday, and where an 11-year-old boy was shot and killed.
So tragic.
It is very tragic. And it happened in the City West complex downtown off of Lynn Street. It was in a section of the complex that kids were known to hang out, and it was considered a safe haven for them. And these were good kids. These were kids that don't get in trouble. These kids actually, what I found out, were coming home from a neighborhood program. And they were on their way home. They were walking home. And you know how kids, they have a lot of energy, and they were sort of tipping over, allegedly they were tipping over trash cans. And, that's the most of the trouble they were getting into is, do this. And a car came up and did a drive-by shooting. They were using an automatic weapon, 22 rounds.
Oh my
God. Unfortunately, an 11-year-old boy was shot and killed.
Oh my God.
5 others were shot. Most are teenagers. One was an older adult. Allegedly, now, because I do need to state that I work also for the Urban League, and I work with their division that's called the Community Partnering Center, and West End is one of the neighborhoods that we work in. So have know a little bit more information than what has been released. But what I can say is the children were out there. It was they were just hanging out, but it was teenagers. It was a 12-year-old boy, a 13-year-old boy, a 15-year-old boy, a 15-year-old girl, and a 53-year-old woman. And what I can tell you is the 53-year-old woman who was shot, she was out there because supposedly her son was out there possibly getting into trouble, tipping over the trash cans. Well, lo and behold, he was inside, and she did not realize that he was inside when she thought he was outside. And she got caught looking for her son. The other children, like I said, were coming home from a program and got caught. Now, there's some conflicting. The police right now are saying there's 6 suspects, but there is talk of a seventh victim. We don't know who the seventh victim is, but it was supposedly someone who was seen running through the complex, trying to get away from something, and he was part of the group that got shot at. We don't know for sure if who this person is and where he is, but that is one of many rumors of why it occurred. But that's the one that remains on the street, that people are aware that there may be a seventh victim, so to speak, of this, who might be the reason why the children were shot at. I will say this, that the neighborhood is appalled that children were shot at, because from what one resident said during a walk through the neighborhood, that, it was always known, it was always the creed that you don't go after children, mothers, or the elderly. And that creed has been broken over and over again, but not in a drive-by shooting like this. But I mean, it's just kind of sad. Usually when a child is a victim of a drive-by shooting, has been because she's been part of a party or a crowd or an innocent bystander or a something. It's just sad. But also, social workers have been deployed to all the local schools in the area. They've been deployed to Taft, to Hayes Porter Elementary, and to the Cincinnati College Preparatory Academy that's located there on Lynn Street. And so the kids have received the counseling. Some are just tired of being asked, are you doing okay? They've accepted what has occurred, they've moved on. But that's also a testament of the residents have also said some feel unsafe, some feel, it's not new. It just depends on who's responding, where they live in the neighborhood, and how they feel. Those who were close to the incident, they were trying to compare it to several low income developments that are, that you've been aware of in New York City or Chicago or DC, and Cincinnati's not like that.
Yeah.
There were nothing compared, even in the ones in Chicago were nothing like the ones that were torn down. I would just say that we have to understand that when we ask people, do they feel safe? What is their definition of safe? Because those of us who don't live in that situation or live in that neighborhood, we know what we know safe is. It doesn't happen here. We live in a very comfortable neighborhood where we don't hear gunshots. We might hear fireworks, or if we do hear something, it's very, very rare.
Right.
Their safe is it's not in my backyard, or their safe is it didn't happen next door to me. Their safe is it's not in our complex. It's around us, but it's not in my complex. So I think when we have to think very carefully when we're looking at this scenario, what these people are going through, because we have people who are working, who may live in this community but don't make a lot of money, but they're trying to live and get by.
Yeah.
And their acceptability of what they deem as safe compared to what we deem as safe, we need to stop and think about that. Because you have a community that is in survival mode, because some of them are on fixed income. Some are getting assistance from the government. Some are working low income jobs and don't make a lot of money, but trying to survive, have a car, and keep a roof over their head, food on the table, and celebrate somebody's birthday, or, get ready for the holidays. And I think we need to stop and take a minute and walk in their shoes, because there are a number of children in that neighborhood who deserve better than what they're seeing and experiencing. And so I will be doing updates as this goes along. And, as the investigation continues, both the mayor has walked the community, social workers have walked the community, other nonprofits have walked the community. And there is a memorial set up for where the young man died. I've seen it. It's grown. First, it was just a sign and a couple of teddy bears, some candles. Today they had balloons, his favorite drink, Fago, and some other stuff out there. So I think they did a balloon release in honor of him. But I think it's, we just have to remember, it's at the end of the day, respect our children.
Yeah.
Their lives are precious, and go from there. So that is all the chocolate news I have for today.
All right. Well, thank you for the chocolate news, Andrea. It's always greatly appreciated.
Okay.
And remember, folks, if you want to find out more information about today's topics and past podcast episodes, you can hit us up at www.cincinnatiherald.com, the Sesh newsletter, or on our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Threads. And make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app. Our podcast is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Amazon, YouTube, and Google Podcasts. In addition, the Cincinnati Herald is now accepting applications for an advertising representative. So please call or text our publisher, Walter White, at 513-680-7076 for more information. I'm John Alexander Reese.
And I'm Andria Carter.
And have a good day.